A machine can be a symbol. It can be a tool of commerce, a weapon of war, or a simple conveyance. But sometimes a machine transcends its own gears and rivets. It becomes an idea. It becomes a mirror, reflecting the ambitions, the genius, and the profound, terrifying paranoia of the man who uses it. In the 20th century, a new dimension was opened to mankind, the sky. And in the turbulent birth of modern politics, one man, more than any other, understood that to conquer the ground, he must first capture the imagination of the air. Adolf Hitler was, in every sense, a man of the earth rooted in the trenches of the First World War, in the beer halls of Munich, in the soil of his adopted Germany. Yet he built his political ascent on a technology alien to most of his generation. He was among the first modern politicians to campaign by air at national theatrical scale. In the late 1920 seconds and early 1930 seconds, air travel was not a luxury, it was a dare. The machines were fragile constructs of wood, fabric, and wire, powered by coughing, unreliable engines. To fly was to gamble. The cabin was unpressurized, cold, and loud. Passengers were not guests, they were cargo, braving the elements in a way that seems almost suicidal to the modern mind. But Hitler saw the advantage. While rivals spent days crossing the country in smoky, rumbling railway cars, he could do the impossible. Speak in Berlin in the morning and be in Munich by evening, appear, as if by sleight of hand, in multiple cities in a single day. He called it Times Deutschlandflug * flight over Germany. It was a masterpiece of political theatre. The aircraft of choice was the Junkers Ju-52, a machine as rugged and unglamorous as the political ideology it served. Its skin was not smooth, but corrugated duralumin, a rippling industrial grey that gave it the look of a flying tool shed. Tough and reliable, it could land on almost any patch of grass. Germans called it times Tante Ju * Ante Ju, a beloved workhorse. The propaganda cameras of Leni Riefenstahl captured the defining image of his rise. The great three-engine beast descending, the door opens, and there he stands descending from the heavens. He wasn't just a politician, he became an event weather moving in. He was, the image implied, the future itself. At the controls, more often than not, was a man who had become one of the most trusted yet least known figures in Hitler's inner circle, Hans Baur. Baur was a veteran of the Great War, a skilled aviator of quiet competence. He first flew Hitler in 1932 during the frantic election campaigns. A bond formed in that vibrating, freezing cabin, not of ideology at first, but the simple, profound trust between a passenger and the pilot who holds his life in his hands. Hitler, a man of ever-growing paranoia, found in Baur a steady hand. When Hitler achieved absolute power in 1933, he made Baur his personal pilot and head of the new government flight squadron, the Times Regierungsstaffel *. But the Times Tante Ju Times was a tool of the Times Aufstieg *, the rise. War would require something else. The Ju-52 was a symbol of the people. The Times Führer Times of a new Times Reich *, a conqueror, wanted a symbol of supremacy. The date is 5 October 1939. Poland has been crushed. The world is at war. Hitler steps onto the tarmac to inspect his new primary aircraft. It is not a Junkers, it is the Focke-Wulf W200 Condor. This was not a workhorse. This was a statement. Designed by Kurt Tank as a civilian airliner for Lufthansa, the Condor was meant to conquer the one route that still eluded German engineering, the non-stop flight across the North Atlantic. It was a beautiful, almost aristocratic aircraft. Long, slender wings spanned roughly 85 meters, about 108 feet, hence the Condor, after the great Andean bird that can soar for hours. 4 sleekly cowled engines, a smooth, polished fuselage, everything the corrugated Ju-52 was not. In 1938, a Condor flew from Berlin to New York in just under 25 hours. A stunning propaganda coup, another reached Tokyo. It was the pinnacle of German aeronautical design. Baur convinced Hitler that the Condor was the future. Faster, higher, and critically safer in Hitler's mind. 4 engines meant redundancy. For a man obsessed with security, that decided it. The Luftwaffe had already seen the Condor's potential as something more sinister. They began to militarize it with bomb bays and gun positions. Hitler's personal aircraft would be unique, the FW-200C-4, U-1, a flying fortress, and airborne times Wolfschanze ***. Its conversion is a journey into the regime's mind, advanced technology driven by abject fear. Bauer, by then an SS Gruppenführer, and, tellingly, not under Goering's Luftwaffe, oversaw every detail. Hitler's loyalty was personal. Even in the sky, he belonged to Himmler's SS. Behind the cockpit sat the nerve center, flight engineer over the 4 engines, radio operator with cutting-edge communications, navigator charting courses over a burning Europe. It doubled as a defensive bastion, an upper turret with a 13mm MG-131, a nose mount with an MG-15, additional positions below and in the waist. A civil airliner bristling with war. A heavy, reinforced door led to Hitler's cabin, an armored capsule. Walls, floor, ceiling lined with armor plate, windows 2 inches thick. The world from his seat was warped and muffled, seen through bulletproof crystal. Inside, a strange contradiction. Polished wood to mimic a plush railway carriage, a 19th century aesthetic bolted into a 20th century weapon. An orderly served meals and drinks, but nothing was cooked aboard. In the rear galley, a heated cabinet kept pre-prepared vegetarian meals warm. Coffee and tea came from thermoses, no alcohol. The environment was control made physical. 6 guest seats accommodated adjutants and generals. Heavy curtains cut glare and prying eyes, so the Times Führer Times could work or sleep undisturbed. And then there was his seat, not merely a chair, but a talisman, an armored parachute seat. Beneath the cushion lay a custom chute, in the floor an escape hatch. In an unrecoverable emergency, the plan imagined Hitler by then in his 50s, strapping in and dropping through the belly of a 200 miles per hour aircraft. It was never practical. It was psychological, a symbol of a life to be preserved at all costs, while millions were spent below. Security defined everything. The Times Führerflot Times was never just one plane. Hitler's Condor, registered Times D 2000, 600 times later Times WL plus 2000, 600 times, and then Times 26 plus 00 asterisk, nicknamed Times Immelmann III Times, was shadowed by a second FW-200 carrying aides and staff, above all as redundancy. The sky was never empty. The greatest fear, however, was not fighters. It was a bomb smuggled aboard. The perfect assassin's tool would be barometric, set to explode at altitude, silent and automatic. The Times Reichssicherheitsdienst Times obsessed over this. Before every flight, a Times second Times crew took Times Immelmann III Times aloft for 10-15 minutes to cruising height. Only after landing safely would Bauer's crew take over and the Times Führer Times board. Every journey began with a rehearsal for his death. While Times Immelmann III Times and its sister ship Times Brandenburg Times lived in high security detachment, other Condors earned a darker reputation. From Bordeaux-Merignac, long-range FW-200 seconds of Times Kampfgeschwader 40 times flew over the Atlantic, their true element. With extraordinary range, they roamed beyond Allied land-based fighters, scouting for U-boats and striking on their own. With heavy bomb loads, they bracketed merchantmen. Underwater shock alone could split hulls. In 1940-41, they were feared. Churchill called the Condor the Scourge of the Atlantic. Their realization? This was the paradox. One aircraft as feared maritime predator, and also the dictator's armored limousine aloft. Prestige turned tool into drain. Every VIP Condor courier sortie removed a high-value asset from the front airframes, crews, and spares KG-40 desperately needed. Hitler's use of the Condor traced the war's arc. From 1940-41, he flew constantly to France, to victory parades, to the Berghof, again and again, to the Times Wolfschanze, Times the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia. The Condor was the tool of triumph. Bauer was his constant companion. In memoirs, Bauer recalled Hitler as a good passenger, often standing behind the pilots, gazing at cloud seas. He seemed most relaxed aloft, insulated by wood veneer and thick glass from phones, pleading generals, bad news. Leadership by detachment. Decisions that killed millions made in a sealed cabin above a burning continent, but the sky would not remain a sanctuary. Desperate British measures appeared catapult-launched hurricanes from cam ships, later escort carriers with fighter patrols. Suddenly, the converted airliner met naval fighters like the Martlet. Big and slow, the Condor's civilian bones showed. Losses mounted. The hunters became hunted. The Scourge was broken. As the Condor's military star faded, so did Hitler's enthusiasm for flight. After North Africa and Stalingrad, Allied long-range fighters could range deep into the Times Reich asterisks. Even the Times Führer's Times armored Condor was now a conspicuous target. Flights grew fewer and lower. Bauer described hedge-hopping back to Berlin from the Times Wolf's Lair Times to avoid fighters, a transoceanic airliner reduced to skimming treetops. The symbol of supremacy turned fugitive. The internal threat grew too. The rituals weren't mere paranoia, they were prophecy. On 13 March 1943, officers around Henning von Tresckow smuggled a bomb disguised as Cointreau onto Hitler's aircraft for his return from Smolensk. The chemical fuse failed, likely frozen in the unheated baggage space. The sky was no refuge, merely another front. The aircraft involved was a Focke-Wulf ***, 200 ***, not some other type. Soon Hitler effectively stopped flying. He retreated from the sky as he retreated from the people. First to the Berghof, then the damp concrete of the Times Wolf's Lair asterisk, and finally the Times Führerbunker Times beneath Berlin. The man who built his image on descending from clouds buried himself in earth. The Condor, once soaring, was grounded. What became of the flying palaces? They met the same fate as the Times Reich Times they served, the Times Führerflot Times scattered. Asterisk, Immelmann III Times, asterisk 26+00, asterisk, sat near the Berghof at Obersalzberg, a glittering useless prize until RAF raids on 20 April 1945, Hitler's last birthday, destroyed it on the ground. Asterisk, Brandenburg Times was captured damaged at Tempelhof. Other aircraft were destroyed by their crews. The symbol of total control collapsed into burning, twisted metal. The parachute seat was never used, the hatch never opened. And Hans Bauer, he did not fly the Condor in the end. There was nowhere to go. He piloted a tiny Fieseler Storch onto cratered Berlin avenues near the bunker, one of the last to see Hitler alive. Given a portrait of Frederick the Great, he dreamed of spiriting Hitler away fantasies of landing a FW-190 on the east-west axis. Hitler refused. He would die in Berlin. Bauer was captured by Soviet troops while trying to break out. When the Soviets learned he was Hitler's pilot, they refused to believe Hitler was dead. Their paranoia mirrored the man he served. Convinced of the flight, they interrogated and brutalized Bauer for years. There was no secret.
Turbulence is picking up. Prepare for a rough patch ahead.
Enraged, they sought a myth that didn't exist. Released in 1955, Bauer returned to West Germany and wrote his memoirs. He died in 1993, loyal to the man in the passenger seat to the last. Today, no airworthy W-200 Condors survive. A few wrecked skeletons have been raised from Norwegian fjords. Museums preserve fragments and restorations assembled from recovered parts. There is no Times Immelmann III Times to visit. The armored capsule, the polished wood, the 2-inch glass, all gone. It was, in the end, just a machine. But the story of Hitler's plane is more than the story of a machine. It is the story of technology and hubris, of using the tools of the future to enforce an ideology of the past. The Junkers Ju-52 was the symbol of his time's rise, time's a populist machine, rugged of the people. The Focke-Wulf WU-200 Condor was the symbol of his time's rule, time's an aristocratic, isolated, armored fortress, detached from reality. It let a man look down at a continent through bulletproof glass, see it as an abstract map, and make decisions that burned that map to cinders. The Condor was the perfect, terrifying mirror of the man it carried, a palace in the sky built on brilliant